Great. I know Karen and Deb are here as guests, and we'll probably have people watch the recording. So just to make sure everybody knows what we're doing, I'm going to act as a little bit of a facilitator because that's what I'm doing in the current cohort of ACUE. So I'll be the one clicking through the slides. So if you see a presenter that is going and the slide hasn't caught up, that's on me. I will that I will just take responsibility for right away. But I do want to thank people for coming. We have some people from the cohort here. I'm looking at you, Deb, right, and others that are big champions for making sure we do what we do to help our students. So what we are doing today, as we can see from sharing my screen, is we're going to just do some presentations. Michelle, Genevieve, Star, Kent, and myself are going to talk about some of the techniques we've implemented from ACUE, and we want to talk about what ACUE is. So that's also part of our setup so everyone knows what we do, because it's something that gets talked about a lot on our campus, and it's something that's definitely worth learning more about, but we'll share some things with you. So as I said, we're all going to talk a little bit about different techniques that we have tried out, that we learned about in ACUE. And so you'll get to hear from each of us talking about one of kind of the tools that we've tried and how it worked, what worked well, you know, our recommendations for you out there. So if you're going to take notes, you can kind of get some of the insights from our ACUE experience and gain some tools for your toolbox. So as I said, I'm serving as the facilitator here because I'm also serving as a co-facilitator for the people in our ACUE course. And so one of the things that I've noticed is the biggest question I usually get is like, what is this ACUE thing that gets mentioned all the time? So the people that you see here, Genevieve, Michelle, Star, and Ken are part of the third cohort of the Effective Teaching Practices Framework course that we run. And so this course is actually a year-long course, and it is sponsored by Provost Furlong. He puts the money forward for us to learn. And it's really great the way that it's set up. So it's set up on campus. And what that means is we have faculty learners from everywhere on our campus. We have about 30 of us. So we're all in class together. And our faculty are from all over campus. I forgot to include the library on here. Sorry, Deb, but we have everyone from the school business, schema class, school of education, and you'll see that represented today in our presenters. And then the great thing is we kind of get to learn together and build together. We have people that teach grad classes, people teaching undergrad classes, people teaching in the MBA program. We're kind of everywhere on campus. And the big thing that ACUE does that's complementary but different from a lot of our sessions run here at CELT is that we all have to do something. So we learn about a technique, and the big challenge is we have to go do it. So not just read about it and be like, gosh, that sounds really great. Oh, maybe I can do that next year. But we go, okay, well, now in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you need to do this, try it up, write it out, and reflect on what worked. And so we do that. We get little badges, right? Gamification of education. So it's really great. These are evidence-based practices that we put into our classroom as learners. We share our experiences in our cohort and discussions. We write things up, and it really complements the other CELT sessions. So if you're hearing about fighting the slump this morning or other things, we've done a lot of these things and got to write them up, and we get a cool certificate at the end. And since this is a campus thing, while it is nationally and there's different ACUE cohorts at colleges throughout the nation, the cool thing here is that we have our little group. And so we're in our third cohort. I was part of the second cohort, so I really bonded with the people that I worked with, and it's really part of our kind of on campus. So we have a discussion board that we use in Canvas, and we get to learn everything in Canvas. Then we go through and we get to, you know, check in with each other. We have little lessons, and it's really fun. So I think a lot of us enjoy getting to be a student again, and actually do things that help us. So that's how ACUE works. And again, if you joined a little bit late, what we do and what we're going to be doing here is talking about some of the practices that we learned from our first block of ACUE knowledge. So we finished our first block in this cohort. We started in September. I think it was September 25th was our official first day of online class. And we went through about November, and we had 7 modules, and they were all under the topic of creating an inclusive and supportive learning environment. And the main premise here is what we say and do in our classroom really creates an environment for students to learn in. So we start with this because a lot of it is about readiness, it's about equity and access, it's about creating that environment where students want to learn, are motivated to learn, and that we can create that space before we go do some of the other techniques later on. So overall, these were the blocks that we had represented. Most of the activities you'll hear about today, they come from these blocks and what we were able to do. So some, didn't maybe translate as well as like, when we're talking about, making sure students aren't distracted in the class. It's not really going to work on Zoom, and it's maybe not the most fun of the activities that we did, but we all got to pick kind of our top hits of what we've really enjoyed putting into our classroom. So that means that it is time to get started from our first presenter, and that will be Genevieve. So Genevieve, do you want to tell us about the activity that you did that's about leading the first day of class and a technique that you can do to help create that supportive and inclusive learning environment from day one?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So my name is Genevieve Alobi. I'm with the Department of Economics. I'm an assistant professor. This is my first year in Senior Oswego. So I've done one semester and then getting ready for the next. All right, so ACUE has been really helpful because this was my first semester getting used to everything. And then, moving from the pandemic into online teaching, I was visiting professor with Colgate University at first, teaching online, and then now back to in-person class. And ACUE provided so many strategies that I could implement right away, to help students get back on track, because I don't know if it was unique to me, but then we realized that many students were kind of in this limbo mode, not able to really hit the ground running. So the strategies have been really useful. Today, I'm going to be talking about specifically the Syllabus Reconnaissance and then the scavenger hunt. So this falls under the leading the first day of class. So this, I guess, is what we are all getting ready for next week, right? So how is our first day going to be? What does it involve? So basically, we want to be prepared, we want to build community, and then we want to establish course expectations and then the relevance of our courses. And so the syllabus activities falls under establishing course expectations and relevance. But of course, you cannot do that without the other two. So why does it really matter? Why does the first day matter? So the first day kind of helps us to set the tone for the rest of the term. And I'm sure we know that the first impressions really matter. So students are looking up to us to guide them through the semester. They want to know what to expect. So they are full of expectation on the first day, looking into our faces, trying to figure out whether we are going to be the kind of professors they really like, what their responsibilities would be. They are trying to gauge how much effort they have to put into the course to succeed. Some have low expectations, others have high expectations. So they are looking up to us to guide them through that. And I guess one of the important things is that it helps students see us as reliable leaders or facilitators who are really here to guide them through what they can actually do or how they can succeed in the course. So being prepared means, the warm, that would be, yeah, just leave it there, Andrea, thank you. So the warm greetings, welcoming environment is very much appreciated by our students. So before they come in, we know we have checked out the physical layout of the classroom, done all of those things, make sure if we are forming groups, the chairs are movable, all of that. So we are prepared with our slides, whatever it is we want to do for that day. And of course, if you are doing a syllabus activity, you are prepared for that as well. And then as they come in, we want the bright smiles and give them a glimpse of what their typical day is going to be to help them, gauge what they will be doing. And of course, we want to also do an activity that kind of represents what their typical day would be. So normally, for instance, I make sure to do some group work because group activity, because that's what my typical day looks like. After a lecture, we have a group work, and then we move on to other things. So this also leading the first day of class, establishing course expectations and all of that. It matters also because we want to help address misconceptions that students may have. So there's much more to be done than just going over the syllabus the traditional way we've been doing it, or the traditional way my professors used to do it. You know, they come in and then the first day is just reading the syllabus. We sit there and then we listen. Sometimes we don't even have a copy of it and all of that. And my colleagues, I guess, will speak to some of the other techniques. So what does establishing course expectations involve? Basically, we are looking out to make sure we are prepared for the day with activities that set the tone and build community. Apart from this, we want to establish these expectations. We can use the strategies we learned about the reciprocal interview, using a mini lesson, assigning the syllabus activity, sending a first day email before you start your online class, having students complete like maybe an orientation model before with the syllabus activity. So many other strategies, and I'm sure resources can be shared. Why will the syllabus activity be important? Basically, this embodies our course and provides like a roadmap for our students. It helps them to know that, okay, this is what this course is going to be about. And we want students to understand the relevance of our course. We want them to understand how they can succeed. So we want to sell the syllabus to our students, basically. Why would we choose a syllabus activity and not read it the boring way? So we may be tempted to, you know, basically just let students sit down, but then letting them interact with the information in a more engaging way helps us send the message across, helps us transfer some of that passion and energy to our students. The active participation is all that I think ACUE is about, trying to promote activity in the class, making students feel more engaged. So syllabus activity will do that for us. And then of course, they can come back to you with questions. They know that, okay, this is something we can keep referring to, right? Setting the tone, you want to form mutual expectations, communicate how the effort is going to lead to success. And then basically, again, establish yourself as the leader who can be counted on. So next slide, please. So some interactive ways to go about it. So the reciprocal interview. So basically I implemented the scavenger hunts and then kind of put in a reciprocal interview kind of when I implemented it in the classroom. So what does it engage? What does it involve? I mean, so before class, you have to, of course, put together your questions. And then on the day, you divide the class into small groups or pairs. When I implemented it, I let them answer the questions first. So I had questions, I'll show it to you in the next slide. I had questions, about 10 questions. I let them bring in their syllabus, and then they answered those questions individually first. And then I put them into groups. In my course, we already had groups because I didn't do this on the first day. It was in the middle of the semester, so after our midterm, so they already had their groups. So they worked on it first, try to find the answers to all of the questions. So I think there are some examples in there. What is the attendance policy? How can you get in touch with your instructor? When is the first assignment due and all of that? Basically, you want questions that you believe will be most relevant to your course or reflect what you want to sell to your students the most, right? And so you share the handouts with the questions, and after that, you let them work in groups to compare answers. Then you review the correct answers with the whole class. Ask students to share, questions that they have about the syllabus, and this is where the reciprocal interview kind of comes in. Then you try to meet their expectations, and then also let them know how you can be available or what your responsibilities towards them are going to be. And then optional is you can have the groups race to finish the scavenger hunt. So assuming you go and you don't do the individual, you just put them in groups and then make it more exciting. And then you can award a prize to the team who answers the most questions correctly. Right? Okay, and then for the syllabus reconnaissance, next slide, please. With this, it's similar, but they work on the syllabus kind of. So you hand out the syllabus to them, you tell students what they'll be doing, explain the activity to them, ask students if they, if and where they've heard the term. If they haven't, then you basically explain, give some time, about 10 minutes if you want. They spend the first part quickly scanning through the syllabus. They want to highlight or choose key points, you know, things that are of interest to them. And then very popular is to ask them to place a star next to 5 important facts. And we did this on the first day of ACUE. So like I went through it, and so now I can also easily implement it. And that's one nice strategy about ACUE. Whatever we are being taught, we are actually experiencing. So we get to be students, and then we get to use the strategies as instructors. So, and prior to ACUE, I didn't know anything about a syllabus reconnaissance. So we have students form small groups to share their selections, then compare. That way, if I chose 5 things, I get to share the 5 things that the other person did, and you know, the knowledge spreads around. It's more engaging, it's active. Then finally, we bring it in and we generate a whole class list of the important facts. We discuss them, identify any important information that wasn't mentioned. So basically my takeaway when I implemented this, like I mentioned, I did it in the middle of the semester after their midterm, and I felt some students were slagging behind. They were not too sure what the expectations were for the course. So I used it to kind of reorient students into the course after the exam. They felt they really understood the expectations of the course better based on their questions and all of that. And I did collect a mid-semester feedback after that too. So some students wrote on there that they really liked the activity we just did. So I got feedback directly from that. And I asked them to, you know, write something about what they want to do moving forward to ensure success in the feedback. And many of them wrote like things we directly did from their scavenger hunt activity that, oh, I'm going to turn in my homework on time. Henceforth, I know I haven't been doing it. So I saw the feedback firsthand. And it also helped me realize there were some gaps in my syllabus that were not clear in expectations. So I explained those in class, and this semester I've made sure to put all of that in. Okay, so a copy of the next slide is like some of the questions that I had asked, so which was more specific to my course, like what are the office hours, how can you attend, name one objective of this course, what is the weight assigned to problem sets, solution presentations, because I have groups who present, who submits the problem set individually. So something that's basically specific to your course. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Genevieve. Up next, we have Kenneth Nichols. So Ken, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Kenneth Nichols. I'm the English Department Writing Fellow for Schema, and I primarily teach English 102. So I'm dealing with a lot of freshmen, a lot of more inexperienced writers, and I do my best to build them up a little bit before they get to the upper division classes. So today I'm talking a little bit about the first day, but mostly about the same thing, mini lessons. I've kind of strengthened my technique of doing these kinds of things based upon what we're learning in ACUE. But the goal is I'm trying to demonstrate to the students the kind of ethos that I want from them. I want them to be curious. I want them to be engaged in the world. I want them to see connections in everything that they learn about. So the math classes that you have, they're not completely disconnected from English, from history. These things all relate in some way. And so on the first day, I'll take roll, and then I'll ask the students. I'll say, what are you about? And you can go to the next slide. The purpose of that icebreaker by just saying, what are you all about? It nudges students toward thinking about their goals in life, for the day, for the semester, because it's an abstract question. And it kind of establishes my authority. I know I don't have much authority, but based on their responses, I can make up little mini lessons about almost anything. I can make almost anything work. I'm trying to remind the students that every subject has a million sub-subjects, which ties into what I'll encounter later when I'll say, well, what do you want to write about? And they'll say World War II. And I'll say, right, that's cool, that's awesome, but there's so many tiny facets to that subject. Like, what are you really curious about? And I want them to try to figure out, because it's an English class, to figure out answers to abstract questions. When I took German in 6th grade, Frau Coulter came up to the first person, the first row, and said, "Ich heiße Frau Coulter. Wie heißen Sie?" And these are 6th graders. We're looking around, and we tried to say, what are you talking about? She would say, "Ich heiße Frau Coulter. Wie heißen Sie?" And so by asking, my name is Frau Coulter. What is your name? By introducing it in that, such a small question in a fun manner, she got us to think abstractly and to kind of really get into it. And so I always took that away. So that's why I ask, what are you about? Instead of what are some of your interests or something like that. And I engage students with storytelling. So a student will say, oh, I'm a finance major. And so based upon that, I can go into like a nice little 5-minute lecture about, next slide, boom, our favorite guy, Bernie Madoff, who made off with all the money. And so obviously I tell them that's not what I want you to do with your finance degree. But instead of just having the subject be something, boring and abstract, it's a real story about people who really got hurt, about a guy who did the wrong thing over and over again for several decades. And I get to explain what a Ponzi scheme is, because it's fun and interesting. And again, to show them how my mind works and what they should steal from me, because students always take a little bit of something from their teacher, usually good, sometimes bad. But that's what I want them to take from me, is my curiosity. And next slide. So with the function of the mini lessons, I want to reinforce what they learned or didn't learn in high school. I'll talk about the Berlin Wall, and they'll be amazed. My goodness, there was a very big wall that went up in a big city in Europe. Yes, and here's how it happened and why, and all the human drama behind it, right? I'm trying to show them everything is connected. Every class means something and matters, and it becomes part of who you are. I'm also just trying to warm up students before class, because I'm just telling a story. And that adds to the common references that we have. Every class has the same kind of knowledge base or the same common references. So by telling these mini lessons, I'm kind of adding to that. And once in a while, we can get into relevant topical subjects. I just heard that meatloaf has passed. So maybe I could tell the students who meatloaf was, as we all should know, right? And I'm trying to encourage class debate. I don't know if it's your experience as well, but students over the past few years have had a lot more trouble getting into, not arguments, right, but making arguments and having exchanges of ideas, and not even controversial ideas so much as just normal back and forths that I think were much easier to have. So I'm really just trying to get them into discussion with each other. Next slide. Most of the time, I lecture on scholarly things that mean something, have big import, that are relevant to everybody's lives. But sometimes I lecture on things of lesser import. And next slide. So, for example, Mad Magazine. I try to show them, see the enthusiasm. So Dick DeBartolo had a piece in Mad Magazine for over 500 issues. He was a titan of American humor, for 5 decades. And I wrote him, and I got a signed giveaway of Alfred E. Newman. So even if a student never picks up a Mad Magazine, it's still fun to point out what Mad Magazine was. The cultural relevance. Maybe there's an art student who says, "Wow, I love that Jack Davis's illustration style, and I want to try to figure out how he did that." Whatever it is, I'm just trying to get students to dig into themselves and figure out what they want to do and what they want to be through all of this exposure to different things. And so that's what I try to do with the mini lessons. And I'm done for now, and you can move on.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ken. Up next, we have Star Madison. So please, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Star Madison. I'm an assistant professor in the Career and Technical Educator Prep Department. This is my second year teaching full-time at SUNY Oswego, but I actually started as an adjunct in 2017. I teach online asynchronous courses, and the method that I'm going to share with you today is about gauging student readiness for online learning. Right now, I teach a prerequisite course that all the students have to take in order to take any of the other CTE courses that we offer. So that's the one that I decided to implement this strategy with. And from my time teaching online, I've noticed that many of our students are adult students. They've been in industry for 10 or 15 years. They've decided they want a career change, and so they're coming back to school. So they may not have had any experience with online education, and they're very apprehensive about this new form of learning. And those people kind of fall into one of two categories. Either they will reach out and express their concern and their anxiety and want to know how I can help them, or just that I can, ease their fears, or sometimes I'll set up a phone appointment or a Zoom appointment with them. Or I get the student that is afraid to show weakness and is afraid to show that they're struggling, so I won't hear from them at all. And I won't know that there's a problem until they've turned in the first assignment, which may be a couple weeks into the semester. And by then, they could possibly have dug a hole for themselves, or they feel the sense of defeat to where now that they got a poor grade, maybe they want to give up, or they don't think that they have what it takes to be a successful student. So I end up going more of the reactive measure in the past of, reaching out, saying, here's some strategies and some resources that will help you for the next assignment. But what I like about this is gauging the online readiness is that I'm able to be proactive. So what this does is the students will take this, and I set it up for them during preview week. So it's before classes have even started. There's no pressure. There's no deadline. They can take it at their leisure. And it assesses the behaviors and the skills that would be necessary for success in an online course. And then it provides me a targeted audience of how I can best support them before the school year or the semester even starts. So as you can see, this online readiness is broken up into 6 main categories: time management, persistence in overcoming obstacles, independence, communication style, comfort level with technology, and study skills. And I want to share with you in the chat a sample of that evaluation form. And what that does is it asks certain questions. You can either say it's likely, somewhat likely, or dislike. So at the end, they can evaluate whether they feel like they need help in the certain areas that they would need help. Time management is huge in an online course, especially asynchronous, because I'm not there to hound them. They don't necessarily see my face, and it's easy for life to get in the way. If you don't set time to do your studies and to do the reading and to participate, it's easy to forget about it. And then 5 weeks have passed and they're kind of like a ghost. And then there's not enough time for them to work their way out. So talking about setting and meeting deadlines, finding that work-home school balance, especially for the adult student, is so important. Many of them have family, whether it's older parents or young children, and they have those responsibilities as well. They're not the typical college student that can, forego having a job. Most of our students, they have to work, they have to pay a mortgage. So how are they going to balance that? Persistence in overcoming obstacles. Will they be able to seek out help for academic issues or technical problems? If Blackboard isn't working, what do you do? Do you contact the instructor? Do you just kind of wait and hope it resolves itself? What kind of strategies are they going to use? With independence, as far as setting and meeting goals, how they're going to do that, and what experience they have setting those goals. Communication style, because we deal with a lot of adult students, they might not be very comfortable with technology and Zoom or even text messaging. So some of them, will email, or you know, some just have difficulty kind of knowing the protocol and the etiquette for communication over the internet. Group assignments, as far as communicating with people from a different background than themselves, how they write and how their words can be perceived by others, they may not have had experience with before. And then their comfort level with technology. I have a lot of students that are in their 60s and they don't have a lot of computer skills. They're not up to date on converting documents to PDFs, using Google Forms or Microsoft Word. Do they know how to do internet searches, how to find reliable sources? What's plagiarism? I mean, it's been so long since they've been out of the classroom. And then downloading and uploading files. And then the last would be study skills. Designing that study space. Are they going to be constantly interrupted? Is there an area where they can be comfortable and be able to access the resources? And then how do they prefer to learn? Whether it's podcasts, which some of them don't even know what podcasts are, videos, journal articles, and things of that nature. And by asking those questions, it allows me to provide them resources that they'll find useful. So, and then the follow-up for the survey. The results of that self-evaluation helps me to identify where those students need extra support. And many times our students never set foot on campus. Because they are online, they miss out on that orientation program. They don't take the college tours. So they don't know what their college tuition is actually paying for. So one of the solutions to help them is with a online resource, let me see, a resource sheet. And I'm gonna put that in the chat, what I've used. And I like to provide them with examples for how to deal with time management issues, strategies for success, persistence in overcoming obstacles. I can provide them with Blackboard information, counseling services, CTS, the Writing Center, the Tutoring Center. Many of my students don't know that there is a Writing Center, that they can access that resource. And I like to explain to them my personal experience of using a Writing Center in graduate school and how much I learned from those workers there. I share with them different types of communication styles, how to communicate effectively online, videos about how to use Microsoft Word or Google Forms, the frequently asked questions for Blackboard, and then study skills and study habits that would help them be a successful student. So after implementing this, I have found that the students, they did use the resources. They did reach out. They seemed very appreciative to learn about these things that they weren't aware of. There was an increased communication. So by sending this out to them and letting them know that, you know, it's okay not to know everything right off the bat, it presents that growth mindset for them. They know that they don't have to be perfect, that they're going to learn and they're going to improve. So the mid-semester check-in showed the use of resources. There was an increased student course satisfaction, especially in the comments section where they were appreciative of that feedback in the check-ins. And it did, I believe, help develop that growth mindset. In the future, not only will I use this survey in 309, my prerequisite course, but in my other courses as well. And I was also thinking of creating a short video for students that are thinking about taking online courses, like, you know, is online right for you? Or a checklist of behavior and skills that would show that you could be successful in that online environment.
Awesome job, Star. Thank you so much for that. And I think it transitions nicely into Michelle Story's presentation.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Story. I am an assistant professor in the Counseling and Psychological Services Department, as well as coordinator of the school psychology program. So I teach graduate students, and I was very excited about this topic when it was introduced in ACUE because I am a licensed psychologist, as well as a former school psychologist. So motivation and helping students want to be successful academically is a big component of what school psychologists do. And obviously, we want all of our students to come to class really eager to learn about the material and be highly motivated just with the content, but that's not always the case as much as we'd like it to be. So it was interesting through this program to learn some specific strategies to help boost intrinsic motivation, and also to help students realize the connection between putting in more effort and how that will translate into stronger performance in the class. So I found that a lot of the strategies were focused, were frankly strategies that I was already implementing to some extent in my classes, but I took a little bit of a different approach. Instead of talking with you about one specific strategy, I'm going to talk about how I tweaked or how I personally implemented the different components that they recommended for boosting intrinsic motivation and forging connections between increased effort and performance. So if you could please move to the next slide, Andrea. Thank you. So first, let's talk about intrinsic motivation. So having students want to be successful, not so much for an extrinsic grade, but because they're highly interested in the material. One of the strategies that they suggested is offering choice. And certainly in the courses that I teach, which are school psychology-based assessment courses, there are specific topics that have to be covered, and there are specific assessments that need to be learned. And I can't really give options of, well, you could choose learning this measure or this measure. However, the way I attempted to incorporate choice is by allowing students to select different age groups or populations that they may administer certain measures with. And there was a final assessment task where students were able to pick which test measure they wanted to use. As far as tools to help students be more successful and improve their performance in class, I've been told I'm the rubric queen, which I'm going to take as a compliment, because I like to set the expectations for my course right from the beginning. My rubrics are already up and posted on Blackboard for this semester, and all of my students know exactly how they are going to be graded, what specifically they're going to be graded on. And I also like to post exemplars. So as students are submitting really strong work to me, I ask for their permission and whether or not they'd be willing to allow me to use those as exemplars for future classes. And I think it really helps to establish what those expectations are. Another component of how I really try to help students learn how they can improve their performance in the class is through use of ungraded assignments. So again, I teach largely assessment courses, and my students have to write psychoeducational assessment reports that are typically pretty lengthy. I have the first report that they write be an ungraded report, but I use the same rubric that I would use if it were a graded report, and I give them very specific feedback so that if it were a grade, they would know what their score would be. And I give them very specific suggestions of what they're performing well, what aspects were well developed, and what aspects they may be able to work on improving. And that ties into the next piece, specific and timely feedback. I think it's critical. A lot of my assignments build upon one another. So I really do emphasize that I try to get feedback to students in a timely fashion so that they're not repeating errors. I want them to get the feedback. I encourage them. I'll actually even penalize students if they're not incorporating the feedback in subsequent assignments. So I really, really emphasize the importance of I'm writing this to give you specific suggestions, and and if you have questions about that, please reach out to me and we can discuss it. But I'm really trying to give them very specific feedback that they can then use to improve performance on subsequent assignments. Another piece that I offer is I permit students to submit rough drafts if it's before there's a specific deadline. So maybe the assignment's due Wednesday, they have until Monday night at 11:59 p.m. to submit it, to allow me time to give them feedback so that they could incorporate that feedback into their assignments. And then I'm always trying to really figure out how to connect learning to long-term goals. So I like to use guest lecturers for that piece because they can speak to how they incorporate some of the assessment tools and techniques that we learn in class. Next slide, please. And then my last section really talks about how to help build the connection between effort and performance. One piece that I'm very passionate about is really trying to motivate students as far as providing encouraging and supporting words to students. I know that's actually at the bottom of the list, but I actually think it's one of the most critical pieces. So my courses are hard. I set high expectations and my students know that, but I also specify that I'm there to help them every step of the way. They just need to reach out to me to, get that help. But if I see that students are feeling discouraged or frustrated or maybe not performing the way they'd like to perform, I do reach out to students to offer, the opportunity to meet one-on-one or to offer suggestions or to offer words of encouragement. And for example, with one of my students who was having some challenges with the course initially, I sent some motivating messages and she mentioned afterwards that she found that was very inspiring and that really helped her. And I also tried to acknowledge the increased effort in class too. So I will do little awards for students who have shown strong scoring accuracy or report writing accuracy. And I try to acknowledge students, not only those who are continuously earning those high grades, but also those who are showing improved effort and whose grades have gone up due to that effort. So other pieces, as far as specific praise, I think it's important not just to say you're doing a great job, but really to emphasize specifically I really like how you were very accurate in your scoring on the last assessment. It's very evident to me that you took more time to review your work, and I saw fewer, your report was very well written. So again, it all ties back to my rubric. That's why I have very specific rubrics. So students are able to see specifically what aspects they're performing well in, what aspects could be improved upon. And I am always encouraging students to be consulting Blackboard so they can see how they're performing. My graduate classes have minimum grades of Bs in order for moving to the next semester. So it's very critical that Blackboard stays up to date, again, the timely feedback. And I am constantly referring students to Blackboard, and I do have the feature set up where they can constantly see what their grade is out of the number of points allocated so that they know how they're performing. I also, so the final piece I just want to comment about is the time management strategies and regular reminders. I like to stay in constant communication with my students. And so I've already sent out my welcome email for next week, but then I do send weekly emails just with little tidbits and reminders. I do notify people about resources. I know Star spoke to that, but I also think that's important for in-person classes too, because even with students who are coming to campus, especially since I work with graduate students, many graduate students don't realize that they're entitled to the same supports and resources that undergraduate students are. And I think it's important that graduate students know you can schedule an appointment with the Writing Center and that that's a free support for you. So I really do try to offer reminders and encouraging words on a regular basis. I try to send a weekly email to my students, and I just use the Blackboard function in order to do that. But just to apprise them of where we are in the semester, what's coming up, how things are going, and always include, please reach out with any questions. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm going to wrap it up by talking briefly, kind of, we have some good structure here. Genevieve talked specific activities, then we went a little bit broader, and now we're going to bring it back specifically. So I'm going to talk about, it kind of builds on this idea of support and creating this environment for our students. And I think one thing that we know about students is that, you know, they do struggle, right? It's hard right now, is especially hard in some different ways. And one thing that kind of ties on the idea of motivation and some of these other areas is the importance of peer-to-peer connections. So they don't always know what's on campus, but they also don't know who's sitting in the class with them. So when I was going through ACUE, this was one of the activities that I tried, and I thought, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to pick this and like write, you know, do it because I have to do something this week. And it ended up working out really well. And so that's why I wanted to share it, because it shows, you know, just the importance of the ACUE structure. So why they recommend doing an activity like creating a buddy system for support is it is kind of focused on the student-to-student relationship. It's tied into these ideas of success and participation in the classroom, right? People are going to continue to show up. They're going to persist if they know someone else is there that cares about them in addition to the instructor. So when I did this activity, I was teaching our COM 100 course, which is a 150-person undergraduate lecture class. It was in person in one of the Lanigan classrooms, and it was my first time being in front of a big class, gosh, since graduate school, right? So, you know, that experience, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm an interpersonal person, and I'm a small group person. How am I going to do this? And that class attracts people in our major, outside our major, because it hits some gen ed boxes. And so it's just kind of this, you can't always think about that population of even having anything in common, right? You might try and say, oh, they're all majors. And then you look and you go, well, half are, half aren't, right? So it is fun. So like we've learned with ACUE, that challenge is doing something. And so, you know, in a perfect world, right, we'd have all that ACUE knowledge downloaded in our brain and we'd do it at the beginning. I learned about this in mid-March 2020 when I was a student in ACUE. And I was like, oh, this seems like a cool one. Gosh, I wish I would have been able to do that in like the first week of classes. But an opportunity called remote learning presented itself. And I said, oh, if we are going to shift to remote and these students that have started to build friendships in classes, they're going to lose that. We need to have someone other than me there in their corner with them. So I picked this activity and said, all right, well, let's see how this goes. And the activity, the ACUE gives us instructions, and it was match people up, assign them a buddy, have them encourage checking in with that buddy, have them encourage working with that buddy, right? Talk to that buddy when you're in class. So if you're doing think, pair, share, grab your buddy. So it's having someone that they can talk to, and then encouraging, oh, do you have questions? Did you miss class? Ask your buddy what happened in class today. So again, perfect world, I would have assigned these in the beginning and it would have been something there from day one. In this case, they started in kind of the new day one when we came back from spring break in 2020. And so I used the email template and I just matched people. And how I did it was I looked at that roster. I knew by then who was kind of sitting near each other. So I went, oh, this person sat next to this person, or they sat near this person. Oh, that person said they're broadcasting. Oh, that person's broadcasting. Oh, they're both transfers. Oh, they're both seniors in meteorology, to try and have some sort of similarity. And I paired them up, and then I used that during some low stakes, you know, participation on message boards and check-ins. I made sure it was very low stakes also because if someone got ghosted by their buddy, I didn't want them to feel like, oh, I'm in trouble because my buddy isn't responding, right? But it was, hey, let me know if your buddy, have you heard from your buddy? And if they're like, no, I haven't, then I could also be like, hey, buddy, how are you doing? So short term, there was a lot of student appreciation for it. At first, they were like, oh my gosh, I love this buddy assignment. You gave me this friend. I didn't know you knew we were friends. And you're like, well, you were sitting together for 6 weeks. So yes, I did notice that. And longer term, it's actually been really great because teaching COM 100 and then teaching upper division classes, I'm seeing the same faces I saw before. I actually remember who they are a little bit better, even though we were asynchronous for half the time. I'm like, oh, that's that person. And they were with this person. And it's also helped them. I've seen that they are still kind of in their same sort of social circles. So a big thing about ACUE is that reflection on like, did it work? Did it not? it worked better than I thought it would. So I was really glad I tried it out. And, you know, I always think, well, would I do it again? And it seems that as always, as we're seeing with most of these things, your mileage may vary. It's a yes and an asterisk. So it really depends on the type of course. I think it would work well for intro classes or courses where people are kind of coming together. I think that I'd prefer to do it maybe from the start so we could have some more diverse pairings, right? When you're creating halfway through, you go, ooh, let's use some shorter heuristics to get these people matched. It might have been nice for them to meet someone entirely different than who they are. So do it earlier. I could also see it working in like an intro to grad studies when they need to start building that cohort feel. So overall, like most of the things we do in ACUE, we're seeing that being part of a community really matters. And so I wanted to talk last so I could remind us that we have a lot of resources here for our students, right? These are resources. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is things that I know we've all shared that we keep coming up in conversations. There's plenty more out there, but making sure our students know, but also making sure that we know together as faculty that we are the ones that are teaching, and we also have the importance of communities. So that's one of the things I've enjoyed best about ACUE. I get to know people in my department, in other departments, and have other people to talk to about what's going on. We've really seen the importance of that. And since this is the third year of ACUE, I do want to let you know that we have a lot. So I went back through and noticed in winter 2020 breakout sessions, we had 2 ACUE sessions. So if you want to go back, it seems the recordings are still there. That was what got me hooked. I said, ooh, this seems really cool. I learned about the jigsaw, I learned about these different techniques, and I said, oh, I can't wait to do ACUE, right? I had applied and was waiting. Liz Schmidt had a great one that I remember attending and being like, she's a rock star. And it was all about the first day of class. And she talked about different activities than Genevieve talked about. So you kind of see, we learned so much and we try a little bit each person, and then we build a community of knowledge. And like everyone else said, you know, you can see we have a lot of resources. I think many of us are happy to share those resources. If you see the invite go out, hopefully the provost will sponsor a 4th cohort next year, right? Consider joining. It's really great for anyone at any various stage, right? We have Deb in here in the library, right? Teaching and instruction sessions. We have Ken, we have Genevieve, we have people that are kind of new, people that have been teaching for a while, and it's been just a great experience for all of us. So if you ever have questions about ACUE, feel free to contact John. Maggie has been a cohort coordinator in the past, or myself. We're all pretty happy to talk up the program. And I tell you, you know, if you've heard about it and you keep saying, why are people talking about it? This is why. It's really great. So thanks for joining us today. I think most of the people here have had some ACUE experience, so it's just some reinforcing. And I know all of us are happy to stay on with any additional questions as we're done, but thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being here. I hope you're thinking about creating that supportive and inclusive learning environment for your class, and also the importance of community where we all get together and hear about cool things like this.
I have 2 questions, Andrea.
Of course, Eileen.
Genevieve, I was wondering what kind of prizes you give out for winners of your team competition.
So I didn't do the prize part. I didn't let them race, but I'm thinking of doing it. And I think it's going to be points. I haven't really thought about giving prizes. Do you think we could do like physical prizes? Andrea? Okay.
When I've done prizes, most recently I did some where it was like pencils from the bookstore, like stickers. I have like the, you know, just stuff like that, right? Because we're all kids at heart. And if you can get a cool sticker, life's pretty cool. But I know that some people, what they'll do is they might have prizes where it's like you get to know the answer to one of the questions on the test or something, or like you get to have this information revealed, or you can ask for 24-hour extension. So there's different ways to do prizes that could incentivize what you want them to incentivize that don't make us go broke and don't always involve food. So yeah, those are some ideas to complement what Genevieve has suggested.
Yeah, thanks. Nice suggestions. I'll probably do the pencils.
And I had a question for Ken.
Okay, we have to keep this quick though, because people are starting to arrive for the next session, which is in the same room, and we've got to exit and restart. So a quick question.
Do you ever do mini lessons, Ken, on grammar or punctuation?
Oh, that comes in during instruction, but I will often give lectures, little bits about something. I guess we'll end up this session if I can share my screen, because I show them that, look, the Oxford comma, this is important. This isn't just something that we care about because we're teachers. So if we all know Rachel Ray, guess what? She's a monster. Rachel Ray finds inspiration in cooking her family and her dog. And that's how I'll use this little lesson to point out, look, the commas are important. That dog is perfectly safe.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to have to stop now because we have people already arriving and we're going to have to exit.